Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome our viewing audience to another session of our Ed Talks series. I am Andrea Ferrari, founder and CEO at Whole Schools, and together with Gabriela Gonzalez Pacheco, Director of Programs, we have created this innovative space to inspire conversations around education during these unprecedented times. Education is being transformed, and at Whole Schools, we believe that equity, well-being, happiness, and innovation are the keys to a sustainable change that is future-proof and that can help us face the challenges of the long and the short-term consequences. For this reason, we gather here with educational experts and leaders that can guide us with their international perspectives and help our educational communities gain awareness around these changing times. Today, we are very honored to have with us Christy O'Brien from the Shanghai Community International School. Christy O'Brien is the Vice Principal of the Elementary section and is here to inspire us today around conversations shaping a culture of international mindedness. Welcome, Christy. Hello, Gabriela. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? I know it's nighttime in Shanghai, yes. Thank you for being with us on this special occasion to talk about international mindedness.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, Christy. Tell us, how come your school is focusing on international mindedness, and why is this an important forming goal at this particular time for your community?
Well, first of all, the school that I work at is an international baccalaureate school. And so the section I work in is the PYP program for the elementary years. And one of the focuses, actually, IB sees international mindedness as the key way to make the world a better place. And that's one of IB's main missions of what student outcomes are, is that students not only are going to be moving out into the world after graduation academically prepared for success in the world, but also to do so as good humans, making the world a better place. So in particular, there is a focus now on enhancements and what the different program components is, and international mindedness is one of the enhancements. But we're taking it a step further in our school system and really looking at it through a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and trying to implement it across our programs, our practices, and our policies. And really that's what I'm here to talk about today. We know that there's not just one journey or one way to do the work of implementing and creating a culture of international mindedness, and so it's very helpful for all of us to just open some global forums and forums like this to be able to discuss it together.
Thanks, Christy, for that introduction. It's wonderful to hear that you're practicing all this. We talked about earlier an analogy that you have that explains very nicely the difference between all these important terms: diversity, inclusion, and equity. Could you please comment on that?
Yes, I think that celebrating diversity and how we think of it is the very feel-good place to be. We love talking about our nations and our languages, especially when we're all together in different countries representing many different nations and languages. There are always the feel-good times. Our whole community at Shanghai Community International School's favorite day of the year is the United Nations Day, where everybody wears their flags colors, and we have a big parade, and we have messages of peace and hope and love, and it's just a really nice, beautiful day. However, if we just talk about diversity alone, we're not doing the real work to address exactly what it means to be a diverse community living together and what it looks like. For example, an analogy that I read recently that I really liked is a simpler way to explain this is diversity is being invited to a party. Inclusion is being asked to dance at that party. And then you're asking, okay, well then you're asked to dance and what? Well, maybe equity then is being able to choose the music that you like, maybe being able to choose the dance that you want to dance, having a teacher that's going to be able to work with your level and where you need to go at that dance. And now there's full participation at that party. It's really recognizing that not everybody at the party knows how to dance the same, and not everybody at the party even likes the music that's playing. And it's just recognizing the full nuance of what that means to be in a diverse community. And so we really grappled with this. We're grappling with this in our school system. It's the healthy place to be grappling with it with your whole community, and saying, okay, so what are we going to do now to define what these different terms mean for us under the umbrella of international mindedness? And then what do we do to make it make sense in tangible ways through our philosophies and through our curriculum. And so one of them, and when we say international mindedness, and I do want to take a step back, it's not just saying, oh, we're diverse and we're going to celebrate that. IB's definition of international mindedness really is about connection, that we are finding a connection to others, and we see ourselves in others as being globally connected. It's also that there's an action element. There's action for positivity and positive change in the world. A huge element of international mindedness through the IB's definition is also a responsibility. What is our responsibility for making the world a better place?
Well, I love everything you've mentioned so far, because right now, especially, if we do not have this global awareness, how can we imagine educating leaders that are able to guide us to a better reality, and one with more social justice, just as you mentioned, and I love the idea of celebrating, especially that part of celebrating the differences that we have around the world, and for kids to be aware of it, and from a very young age, just understanding those differences, not as points of conflict, but as points where they can create community, I think. No, right, Andrea?
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Gabby, because when we aim to listen to students' voices, we do hear them loud and clear. They're unrelenting, and they do so proclaiming their power to co-create a society that's more just, more caring, and more inclusive. So I would ask Christy then, how do we go about ensuring that everyone has access and opportunity when schools are so great at celebrating diversity? How do we take it that step further and really make this tangible, as you were saying? How do we ground this in the work that we do every day? How do we align it, for example, to the learner profile, the IB curriculum, the IB framework, or the social justice standards that you were referring to earlier?
Yes, and I think that when you mentioned access and opportunity, that's exactly what leveling it up means. When you're making elements to talk about action and change, you're really talking about access and opportunity. And so we have diversity, that this is who we are. We represent many different identities and nations and languages, genders and races and and so now the second piece of it is, now we're including people and we're creating a playing field for everybody to be able to be there. Now what access and opportunity is also recognizing, first and foremost, that not everybody is treated the same way. It's not everybody doesn't have a fair playing field in whatever context that we're in. And so the access and opportunity piece is a part of the equity piece. And then from there, we're addressing with children in our own community, first and foremost, to recognize what all those different areas of inequities are. And we're directly addressing discrimination, prejudice, and bias in what our world looks like. And that children are going to be able to recognize it just from their daily interactions and their daily ways that they do it. Something that we've been working on in our school is, okay, how do we make sense of this beyond just celebrating UN Day and our flags and our flag parade, and how do we go beyond this? Well, first, and identifying what the different terms mean. So other pieces that we have within the PYP framework in our elementary school to help really define what our pathway is the enhancement of action. In the PYP, all of our units, for example, have an element of action. So now we're learning about how the world works in terms of, the environment or environmental, human consumptions has environmental impact, for example. Okay, so now we're learning about it. We're learning about what are we going to do about it? How is our personal behavior going to change? Are we going to advocate for it? Are we going to change our own behaviors? Are we going to have some type of entrepreneurial component that's going to address it? Is there an element of social justice with that environmental change that needs to happen? So who's more affected by the changing climate, for example? And that's the social justice piece of it. And so once again, the IB has defined these different components. When we say action, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about social entrepreneurship, social justice, advocacy, participation. Are you going to show up to join or to follow Greenpeace on Instagram, for example? That's a minor level of participation, but are you going to make that attempt to do that, to learn more? So that helps us in our thinking about, okay, so what does action look like? And it helps us not be so lofty. But still within that, let me add another component. Our other component that we have within the PYP to help us really define and implement in our curriculum, in our policies, programs, and practices, I should say, these elements of international mindedness is the learner profile. That is really the umbrella of the range of human attributes that we want children to learn and humans to learn that really make a sustainable change. So they call it the range of attributes for human responsibility. So if you're familiar with the learner profile attributes, ones that really stick out for human relations in particular is caring and principle. So as a school, we used, so shared agreements. What are shared agreements as a school? We have to have shared agreements of how we treat each other, and children have to be able to process and identify with what that means for them and what that means for their relationships with their classmates. So we have caring and we have principled. And from pre-K through grade 12, when kids are graduating, they know these attributes and the language of them, and through their units and through their classroom talks, through their community building, they know the language. And so with our school-wide shared agreements at the beginning of the year, the kids describe what it means. They make role plays. They get on the theater stage and they demonstrate and talk to their peers about what this means for them. We make little videos that we share on this is what caring looks like. This is what being principled looks like. And then we bring it, so we have a first 2-week unit of the year. And in that first 2-week unit of the year, grades 1 through 5, we all have the same exact unit, differentiated for grade level. And the children are really building out their understandings of these shared agreements. They're building out their understandings of what happens if there's conflict. So in conflict, what do these shared agreements look like? How are we identifying how we were treated? How are we recognizing how somebody else is treated? How are we recognizing how we're treating other people like we want to be treated? How are we recognizing how we repair the damage that was done using these same exact tools and concepts, and also statements? So for example, by statements, still we're thinking, okay, so we've got action, we got learner profile, and we're still like inventing, making up what that means to us. And we have our international mindedness. It can all seem pretty lofty. And so we still felt like we were grabbing on for a very tangible tool to use. The equity team, we said, well, if we bring this to teachers and just tell them to do action, to do international mindedness, make sure you're teaching connection, that students can relate to each other in your unit. That's so lofty. It's not tangible enough, we felt, as a resource. And what we really found that we are just thrilled with was the social justice standards from the Teaching for Tolerance resource, which actually is not an IB resource. But there we really found, oh yes.
one second. There's so much good stuff here to unpack. I'm loving how you're giving us some guidance and suggestions as to how to start the school year, because on this side of the world, our schools have now taken their summer break, and a lot of us are, as leaders, planning how we're going to take off as we begin the new school year, not knowing if we're going to be face to face in the school buildings or still be virtual, right? But I love how you're explaining your start of the year units and aligning these the IB attributes in the learner profile and the unit of who we are, exploring. And you mentioned about having an equity team that's leading these plans. Can you tell us a little bit more and give us some advice in schools that are going to get started? How do we put this in place? Tell us a little about your equity team planning here.
Well, so we have in our school, how we set up our committee structures was that we have our different committees, and we wanted each committee to have at least one representative from each team in the school. And so we have our culture team, and then our equity team operates within our culture team. So our culture team encompasses, morning meeting, social emotional learning, mindfulness, all the wellness aspects of it, and then equity is actually born from that committee, that team, because we recognize that if we really want to talk about student well-being and student care, we're going to directly address equity as well, and teach kids really how we make change through some of the unfair things that they see happening. And so that's our particular team. And so it's just the teachers who are most passionate about equity that really are prioritizing that. So we're pretty grateful for that, because we also have the math team, the literacy team, the inquiry team, the tech team. And then we've got the equity team. And so we're very conscious that we have to spend our time wisely, because they're the experts in a different area, and they're not going to those different content and curricular areas. And so, yes.
That makes a lot of sense. And then you were talking also about offering the teachers a more concrete guidance. And I interrupted you. Then you were talking about the social justice standards that were being particularly helpful to align and making things tangible in the classroom. Yeah.
Yes, we really feel. We're very excited for a tangible tool that we made using the social justice standards, because they're so concrete. So I can give a couple examples of that. So for example, the social justice standards have 4 domains. So they're talking about identity, diversity, justice, and action. So you can see some crossover between action and the learner profile, and so there's already there. But the social justice standards take things 3 levels deeper, with attention to combating discrimination, combating bias, teaching children to critically examine and identify young how they are seeing people treat each other, and how they want to be treated themselves, and that they're directly seeing it in the language that's provided in some of those standards, which is why we like it. For example, what they say about their diversity domain is students will examine diversity in social, cultural, political, historical contexts, rather than in the ways that are superficial and oversimplified. So even how they're identifying diversity, which is technically just diversity is technically people representing different identities and social groups in a group together. And so that's the basic understanding of what diversity is. But they're really taking it for note. When we talk about diversity, students are going to be really examining the context in which people are diverse in a group together. And so that's just an example of how it's taking things deeper.
Christy, one question. I mean, I hear all of this, and it looks like it's a very solid structure from the school's part or point of view. Have you any recommendations for when, the family culture probably doesn't strive for this. So, I mean, when students are in school, they're living all of this and having many resources for it. But many times they go back to their family atmosphere, and it's just a different experience, right? So that can even clash with what the school is striving for. So have you tried anything to just help, this type of situation that can make it difficult for kids to just incorporate this type of ideals?
Yes, definitely. So one thing, actually, the one of the first things we did as an equity team is we had a parent group, and actually, our parent group was called Internationally Minded Parent Advisory Committee.
Okay.
We talk about one component. We address this. We're actually heading into the school year with many plans for many other components, surveys, gauging how people perceive diversity, gauging how our community, our families perceive being included. We have a community of like 60 different countries. So we represent a very diverse community in our school community. So we have all that coming. But the first thing we did in our launch, we wanted to be actionable. So we did launch with, okay, parents, we need to have an internationally minded parent advisory committee who wants to join. And something that came out of that, which is really interesting for us, was the parents were like, yeah, well, my kid comes home telling me I can't use any more paper towels and they want to save the planet. But my kid can't talk about the racism that they saw today in their classroom. Like that's what the parents brought asking. And it was really exciting for us because they were really the launchers of equity work in our lower school. Because now as the parents in the community, so we went at our international day, that then they had a booth and they were there with their mission. We had a very, very bold mission that was directly addressed racial equity, and they had it posted, and there were smiling faces and inviting parents to events that we were doing. We did 2 really cool events that year, and then COVID happened the next year, unfortunately. So But we did 2 really cool events, and they were the people out there championing for parents to start talking about it and start opening up conversations that this is what we're going to do. And then we put it in our handbook, in the culture section of our handbook, that this is what we do and this is what we talk about. And then, we do have bigger work now starting in our system. We're going system wide with it. It was part of our accreditation goals. International mindedness as a system. And so now it's really taking on a whole new, very large level. And it's not another difference I'm going to say with the food festivals and fabric version of diversity celebrations is that if we're feeling too good, it's not being done the right way. Because it's courageous conversations. It is negotiating philosophies. It's challenging biases that exist within people. And there's actually new things I think is maybe I can tell both of you separately something else we're facing right now. But another thing, we had racism in our community, and there was no parent that was saying, oh, we don't need to talk about racism right now. Every parent, there was a lot of shame in all of the parents whose kids perpetrated the racism, and it was very, very ugly racism. And nobody was going to come out and say, oh, we can't talk about race now, for example. So that's just how we did garner some support in our lower school, and we haven't been challenged in our lower school by parents with our equity work so far.
Okay.
Wow, Christy, that's takes a lot of guts, right? To have these conversations, and first of all, to accept that it's going on, and then to address it. And I think what an important discussion this is, to take away that fear component, right? We're all thinking it, but yet nobody dares to open up the conversation. And I think a lot of times it's because we haven't developed the right tools in order to do so, or the kids just don't have the language, and we're afraid of what might happen if we open up that Pandora box. But I guess what I'm really thankful for today is reminding us how important it is to address this from all of the dimensions in the school community, right? I think, Gabriela, you brought in a very important point about how to bring in the families, and once we have that, and then we have our teams in place within the school structure, then we can take it forward. I really love how you framed it around a system, Christy, and not just something that's isolated and stands alone, but we make that a part and connect it to everything we do. And what a better way to do it than by the learner profile, where those attributes just exemplify everything that we need to be doing, right? And we need to be out there taking risks. Well, we need to be, being those risk takers with open-mindedness that will lead us into a better way to face the dilemmas we're facing today. We have about a couple minutes to wrap up. If you have any final comments, Christy, we'd love to hear them.
Sure. And just as you said too, I did want to mention too that using the learner profile, and we directly attached can-do statements to learner profile. So when teachers are adding to their units, we wanted to make it very tangible that we're giving students the language, as you said, to be able to use the language with their everyday common circumstance and situations that happen. And so that's definitely what we did. Yes, in the goal.
Can you give us an example of a can-do statement just as we close? That sounds like something that can be so familiar, so easy to do, and so important to make it stand out and make it concrete, right? For the little ones, I know you start so young, and then take it all the way up through our older students and our staff and ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So an example of a can-do statement, when we did it, we made a tool where we fit all of the can-do statements under our current learner profile attributes, under each attribute. So for example, for principled is in our first 2-week unit as one of the learner profile attributes we focus on, because it's also a shared agreement. So with being principled and asking the kids what it looks like, the can-do statement is, I pay attention to how others are treated, and I treat others how I want to be treated. And so, for example, there's a layer of that is where we're asking kids, pay attention to others. It might not have anything to do with you, but pay attention. Is that how you want to be too? And so being principled, then that's such tangible language for them that we can use through a proactive and reactive side through conflict. And then we're just teaching, empowering students with that language and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. And I love that you close with the principled attribute. One thing that stands out in my mind, and I always remember telling kids, was it's when you're doing the right thing, even when no one is looking, right? So you do it often enough, and then it'll stick.
Right.
Thank you so much for that reminder, Christy. We love hearing about your school and all the great things that are happening there, and we can't wait to have a look at what's coming in the next school year and share it here at Whole Schools. We thank you so much, all the way from Shanghai at your beautiful Shanghai Community International School. Wishing you guys a great summer over there, and we'll keep in touch through here. Thank you, Gabriela, and thanks to the production team, and we'll see you soon. A big hug.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. Goodbye.
Thank you.